All right, everyone, this is the mobility series, and with this particular group of tests, RITfit stretch, I'm going to cover all of them in one long video. So if you're not teaching a class that requires the stretch protocol, you don't need to watch this video. But you also, if you are a stretch instructor and you are watching this video, you'll need to check in on the time plank and the sit and reach test, because I'm not going to cover those here. I'm just going to cover the 3 other tests that you'll be using that no one else will be using. Their mobility test looking at particularly the mobility of the shoulder, of the spine, and of the hip. So that being said, the equipment that you'll need for all of your tests will be a stopwatch. You'll need that for the time plank component. You'll need a tape measure. We'll provide you 1 tape measure or 2 tape measures and at least 2 goniometers to conduct these assessments. You'll also be given a sit and reach box in your studio space. So you will have all the tools that you need in order to conduct this series of tests. So it should be pretty straightforward stuff. With this series of tests, please complete your normal class warm-up or just go through some kind of warm-up progression. Because we're looking at mobility, it is important to have some kind of semi-exertional component prior to doing these measures. Otherwise, we may find that the students are just too cold and they're not going to have very good responses to the stretching. Obviously, a good warm-up will also help prevent injury in some cases, especially if some students are able to achieve high levels of flexibility or hypermobile. Good warm-up will help prevent any kind of injuries that would occur there. So after the warm-up's complete, the first test that you would do is the time plank. Again, refer to that video. Pretty straightforward process. The individual's just in a plank position and you're just announcing the time every 15 seconds until your entire class fails. Again, that's covered in greater detail in the time plank video. The first mobility test that you're actually going to conduct is the shoulder mobility test. Basically what that involves is the dominant arm. In my case, that's my right arm. The dominant arm of the individual reaching up and over their back, like they're trying to pat themselves on the back, and their other arm coming up in the opposite manner and trying to reach up from behind. So let me demonstrate what that looks like with me, and then I'll bring Michelle in and actually show you how to measure it. So my dominant arm is coming back and over. My non-dominant arm is coming up like this, all right? So you can see my dominant arm is actually palm facing down or against my back, and my non-dominant arm has my palm facing out. So you can see my shoulder mobility is pretty lousy. I can't get my hands anywhere near one another. And it's the relationship between your hands that we're going to measure. So I'll stand up here real quick. Pretty good right there. I'm going to bring Michelle over. And we're going to just show you real quick how to measure this test. All right, so Michelle is also right hand dominant. So she's going to bring her hand back and over. With her non-dominant hand, she's going to bring her hand across like so. Now in Michelle's case, she has quite a bit of overlap. Basically, let's just say Michelle's hands only came to here just for purposes of example. You know, for me, my hands don't come anywhere near touching. In this case, we'd have a negative value. So think about this in terms of when the fingers touch, when they just meet, that is a 0 value. When they are apart, it is a negative value. And when they overlap, it is a positive value. So in this particular case, if I measure the distance between Michelle's hands, I get a value of 4.5 inches. So she'd have a negative 4.5 inch value. Now if her fingers came together and touched, that would be 0, okay? Now in Michelle's case, she gets a good amount of overlap. So the trick is to see how much overlap she has. And in this case, I've got to move her fingers apart because I want to use her middle fingers. From one middle finger to the bottom of the other, we get 1.5 inches. So she has 1.5 inches of overlap. That would be her final score if we were to conduct this test. Now we want one measurement here. So once you've shown the students how to conduct the test and the measurement, have them practice a little bit, but take the measurement just one single time. This isn't a situation like sit and reach where we're offering one trial after another after another. It's one shot, get the measurement, and then have them record it and move on. With a partner, this process should take place pretty quickly. One big group demonstration, and then have them move on to just taking the measurements themselves. Next test that we're gonna cover, in fact, you may let's pan down for this one because I'm going to be on the floor.
Okay.
Is active spinal extension. Now with active spinal extension, the individual is just going to lay on the floor, chest down, and what we're simply looking for them to do is to bring their body up off the ground, and by keeping their head in a neutral position, not hyper extending and not flexing at the head, so no movement at the cervical vertebrae, just keep them neutral. Have them lift their body up, and then we're measuring the distance from their chin down to the floor. Now you'll notice, we have Michelle slide over so you can see me without her measuring first. Maybe she can just measure on this other side here. But I'm starting just like this.
Palms up.
Palms facing up, toes pointed so that my laces are against the floor. And then I'm just bringing myself up.
By inches, right?
And holding that position. What was the measurement?
11 inches.
So 11 inches would be my measurement, all right? So I'm just pulling myself back into that kind of hyperextended alignment, and that becomes that active spinal extension, or in this case it's hyperextension, all right? The active spinal flexion sit and reach box, there's 2 of those. I covered them in that other video, so you should be all set there. And then the 4th measurement is probably going to be the most difficult in terms of new equipment for you. For those of you that have never used one of these, this is a goniometer. Basically, a goniometer is just designed to measure joint angle. Now, when this thing is perfectly straight with itself, or at 180 degrees, it does also serve as a ruler. So you'll see that there are inches and centimeters. We go out to 13 inches and 33 centimeters on this. So this can serve as an extra tape measure for those over-the-shoulder mobility tests as well. Basically, this circle, the middle point of this circle, is what needs to serve as the point of rotation for whatever joint you're moving. So if I were to look at my elbow, for example, and I put it against my arm right now, this would represent 180 degrees, a straight line. But as soon as I bend my elbow, I can compensate for that bend by putting both of the arms of the goniometer in line with the bones underneath. So in this case, my humerus and my ulna and my radius. So by doing that, I now have a reading of about 90 degrees. Now obviously I'm just kind of eyeballing that. It's not perfect, but you can use the inner wheel on here because it's graduated in degrees in order to measure joint angle. Now you'll notice that there are several different graduations on this goniometer. The one that you'll be using has white with black lettering, so it's the most obvious of all the scales. Basically, for this last test, we're looking to measure the angle at the hip that the individual is able to bring their hip up into a flexed position. So let me show you what that looks like without the goniometer, and then I'll have Michelle jump in and just take a quick measurement. All right, am I still good on
You're still
the
good,
video?
yep.
Great. All right, so I'm just gonna lay completely flat on the ground, and then I'm going to cross my hands over my chest like so. For this test, I'm raising my dominant side, so my right hand and right leg are my dominant side, and all I'm simply doing is pulling this up until I can no longer bring it back without bending at the knee or bending at the other leg. So this position right here represents pretty much my max, all right? Now whether I point my toe or flex my toe, dorsiflex my toe, doesn't matter. You just have the individual just kind of keep a neutral foot and bring that back as far as they can. So you can see my leg being straight is really what's most important here, all right? If Michelle jumps in here, I'm going to have her measure the joint angle. So she's going to take the goniometer, and I'm going to repeat that process. So the circle is going to be right at the point of rotation of my hip. I'm going to bring my leg up till I can't get it any further, and then she's going to measure with one arm basically representing my spine and the other arm representing the angle of my leg, in this case my femur.
Got it.
All right, once she has that measurement, she's going to take it and look on the bottom aspect of the goniometer. In this case, it was about 55 degrees. So, you know, round it to the nearest 5 degrees is fine, okay? It's graduated in, well, a single degree, but rounding to the nearest 5 degrees is totally appropriate in this case and will give us good readings. All right, and that's the final mobility test. The goniometers are pretty indestructible. They're plastic, but if they get thrown around a lot, some of the markings can get scraped off, so just handle these with care. They are a fairly inexpensive tool, but something that we don't want to replace all that often. And that covers it for the mobility tests. So any questions regarding this, again, just contact us over email. And I emphasized this in the other introductory video, which you may or may not have watched, but remember that this is just our first round of doing this. So we're looking to get accurate results from all of this that are fairly precise, but at the same time we recognize that a lot of these processes are new for you and for your students. So this is an opportunity to really take some time, watch these videos, have a good feel for it, but we don't expect perfection right away. What we do want you to do is just as much quality control as possible. Try to get these results as accurately as you can, because remember, we're going to reassess students in the exact same manner. And if you don't have valid information to begin with, it doesn't matter whether you get valid information to end with, because there's going to be discrepancies there. All right, so we really want to present students with an opportunity to see how much they've progressed in all of these classes. All right, thank you.